Okay, so what I want to do, yeah.
Okay, I got to record this, right? Okay, so pretty much what I want to do is I want to go over the different aerobic stimulus and the training stimulus and give you guys better knowledge so you guys know what you're doing, so you don't have a doubt that you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing or anything like that. It's like you have a deeper understanding of everything that you're doing and how the training is going, and basically the methodology behind it. So you just have a better understanding. I mean, when I was training in high school, it was like always tough to like kind of pull out the information from my coach, asking him like exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it, and he was just like, just do it, and having an understanding of what you're doing and why we do certain things, it helps you like just grasp the concepts, and then you end up like training harder because you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing is correct. So that's why I want to get these, like I wanted to do some kind of like Facebook like live thing or some kind of Q&A kind of thing. And once I saw these Zoom casts start coming out, I was like, this is a perfect way to teach everybody at the same time and get a lot of feedback and information from everybody else. So that's pretty much why we're doing this. And let's get it going. All right, so screen share here. All right, so there are we're going to go over the 3 kinds of stimulus. There's aerobic stimulus, which is with oxygen. Pretty much aerobic stimulus is anything that's easy, okay? With oxygen means that you're able to get oxygen into your body and transport that to your muscles, okay? And then easily create energy from that, okay? Like that's the main function of aerobic training, is with oxygen, okay? So that's one of the main focus. Now, aerobic max velocity is a little different, but it's the same thing. It's aerobic, but it's the fastest you can possibly go aerobically, okay? So there's a difference between running really easy and then running running with oxygen and going really fast. So understanding that, you develop a people often say like, oh, can't I just do like easy running? Like, why do I have to do like tempo runs? And I always come back with, well, you can do easy running, but you're not going to win races. It just doesn't happen. Running easy does not mean running fast. And the thing that you need to develop the most is aerobic max velocity. Aerobic max velocity is what's going to drive your race pace. That's something that's going to drive your half marathon race pace, your 10K race pace, your 5K race pace. Aerobic max velocity is basically the one of the major barometers of performance when it comes to kind of understanding how fast you're going to run. So like usually there's coaches that are like, oh yeah, based on this workout, I think you could run X. And they're getting this because of the aerobic max velocity. It's not like, oh yeah, you went on a 2-hour run, now you can run a 15 flat 5K. It's like they don't match up. That doesn't make sense. What makes sense is we have you doing your aerobic max velocity, and on that workout you've actually gotten really close to running 15 flat, and then that's when we can say, yes, as a coach, I believe you could run a 15 flat. So the aerobic max velocity is a very high barometer on performance on race day, okay? And it still has a lot of oxygen. It's still something that you can do that has oxygen involved in the process, but it is at a really, it's a lot faster pace, okay? The next thing we're going over
Mark,
is, yeah.
So, yeah, so just to reiterate, the like all the way up to what, like, or all the way down to what, like the mile even, or like 5K, maybe even down to the mile then, um, even world record holder is running aerobically,
Yes.
right?
So that's the thing. It's like when you see the world record in the marathon, the world record in like the 5K and the 10K, these performances are all done at aerobic max velocity. Okay, where they're not getting crazy yet. They don't get insane until the last like 400 to 600 meters of a race. So for the most part, it's all aerobic. So the only way to drive aerobic max velocity is to be in it, to run it, to actually train it, to make sure that that pace gets faster and faster and faster. If you're training and you're not focusing on aerobic max velocity, you're not going to be able to run fast comfortably. You could do it, but there's going to be some points where you're going into the aerobic anaerobic mix, and we'll talk about that right now. But so, and when you do that, you're not going to be able to hold it for very long because anaerobic muscles don't last long. So let's go over that. Next is we're going over pure speed. Now, pure speed is anaerobic. That means without oxygen. Those are exercises that are done in 45 seconds or less. Okay, so this is pure speed work. This is without oxygen. That means, in theory, and I've actually tested this theory, you can hold your breath for a 200. You can just go out there and run as hard as you can for a 200 and hold your breath the whole time. And your time between breathing and not breathing will be like unrecognizable, basically. It's like a second difference or whatever. It's just uncomfortable because you're not used to doing it. When you get up to running and you're like running at a fast pace, you're like, oh, wow, I'm getting going, I'm running fast. Like, it's just natural that you want to breathe, but in actuality, your body cannot transport that oxygen that you're taking into your muscles, so it doesn't even matter. So it's like breathing has nothing to do with 100 or 200. It's actually better if you don't breathe because you're wasting energy trying to breathe. So breathing is non-existent, and oxygen has no bearing on any type of speed work 45 seconds or lower. Okay, so in pure speed, what you're trying to develop in pure speed is you're trying to develop turnover. You're trying to develop muscle coordination. You're trying to develop the ability to turn over your legs and to go faster. So that's all pure speed is worried about. It is without oxygen. The next one we're going over is the mix, which is anaerobic endurance. Anaerobic endurance is a little different because now we've taken there's muscles that we have that are either they're predominantly aerobic or anaerobic, and with the mix is that you have some muscles in some muscle fibers that go either way depending on your training. So if you train more anaerobically, these mixed muscles will become more anaerobic. If you train more aerobically, these mixed muscles become more aerobic. So it kind of depends on your race, what you're doing, and what you're training for will determine how these muscles change and kind of how you manipulate these muscles. But the important thing about the mixed muscles and the mixed system is that you are able to this system works from 45 seconds up to 3 minutes. And that's how you train this system. And this system is the most biggest driver when it comes to performance, when it comes to anything like 10K, 5K, 10K and below. So when it's below 5K, it's really important that these muscles are finely tuned. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to convert these muscles more into the aerobic max velocity, if anything, and that's how we drive performance in the mixed stimulus. The mixed stimulus involves anaerobic ability because you're going really fast, but it also involves aerobic ability. So that's where that mix system comes in. And it's working with oxygen in a very limited amount and still being able to do something like run hard with very limited oxygen and having to transport that oxygen as quickly as possible to your muscles so that you can actually create energy. So that's the mix. And it really, you know, people that are coaches understand that like the mix is probably something that's been discovered for about like no more than like 15 years. So it's not like we didn't know that the muscles did this. We didn't know that training stimulus kind of led to these findings, and that that there are certain durations that you run that work this system out the most. And if you're working the system, like it depends on how you're training, and what you're training for will determine how you want to manipulate the system and how much time you want to spend in training the system. Okay? So, are there any questions on the 3 different types of stimulus that are involved in running? No? Hold on, let me stop sharing for a second. Okay. Okay, any questions or anything? I can see everybody's face. No? All right. So I think I've talked to you guys a lot about this, but some people I talk to more about this than others. But this is pretty much like the I would say the 3 like main stimuluses that we work in training, and every single one of them is very important because they each hold their place in helping you get faster. So understanding how these systems work, why we work these systems is very important, because I know there's some people that like all my ultra people are like, why do I do sprints? And it's like, well, it's very important because that's how you get faster for your mixed workouts. Well, why do I need to do mixed workouts? Well, because that's going to drive your max velocity. Why do I want to drive my max velocity? Because that's going to actually make you faster for the races. So it all they all affect each other. And if you don't work out one of those things, then it's just like a house of cards. It's going to fall down. So if you want to drive performance, you have to be working all 3. And we're going to be talking about how we do that and when we do that. All right. So let's go back to okay. So let's go over the zones. All right. So yeah, we'll go over zone 1 first. So zone 1 is basically recovery pace. It is anything that's, and what I like to tell what I like to tell you guys, my athletes, is that the recovery zone is a healing run. Okay, like you want to finish the run, feel rejuvenated. You want to feel that the run didn't kill you, but you actually feel recovery from the run. You feel that the run was easy, and you feel like you can go out and run the next day. If you finish the run and feel like you can actually do the run over again, then you've done zone 1. Okay, that's zone 1. Now zone 2. Now
Hey,
we're getting
Mark?
yeah.
So 2 things. When do you usually prescribe zone 1, or when do you recommend that we like do it? Because I know like in a lot of our plans, like you'll just have easy runs. And I know like for me, I know I make up, like I decide when I need to go zone 1. Sometimes you put it in my plan, but most of the time that's like, this is my body telling me like, okay, no, I need to back off. So when, and then also like, how do you know you're in zone 1?
Okay, so zone 1.
Off of perceived effort, not off of heart rate.
Yeah. So zone 1, basically, you should be able to have a conversation with somebody. You should be able to, like, if you had someone near you, you should be able to talk a full conversation like I'm talking right now. It should be easy. It should be very light work. You should feel like very to little, like any tension in the body. It should be very loose. It should be a very easy effort. If you're talking about heart rate, it's about 60% of your max heart rate, and it should be very, very light. Being able to talk, and that's why I always talk about oxygen in my stimulus, because oxygen is a very, very great indicator as to what you're doing in your run. Okay, so if you're talking and you're able to talk and still you're able to talk but still able to transport oxygen throughout the body for recovery and oxygen transport, then obviously the pace is very easy. You're not working very hard. If you're having like shortness of breaths and you're working harder, then you're going into the other zones of training. Now, let's say like you're going out and it's after a hard run and your intentions are to run zone 2. Like you're going out for a run and you're saying to yourself, oh, it's an easy day, I should be running zone 2. And you go out there and you just feel like shit. Like you feel like garbage, like it's not going very good. Go to zone 1. It's not bad to go to zone 1, okay? It's just, well, I'm gonna explain to you, but zone 1 is necessary for recovery. It's necessary to heal the body. It's necessary for you to feel better for the next workout. Remember, when we're going into heavy training loads and we're doing lots of speed work and we're doing lots of faster running, those runs are very important to be hit in the zone. Those are absolutely important. You've got to hit those zones. The next day, when I say easy run, it's your call and to figure out whether or not you're doing a zone 1 or zone 2 on that day. And you have to figure out whether or not you are recovered or if you're beat up. And sometimes I'm beat up and I go out there and I'm hitting like 7:15 pace or 7 flat. And typically when I'm in zone 2, I'll be hitting like 6 flat. So that's the difference. It's like, you know, zone 1 allows me to recover the body because I know the next day it's going to be another hard workout and I got to hit that zone properly in the speed workouts or in the mix or in the aerobic max velocity workouts. Those runs that's what's going to push the needle. If that's the run that's going to push the needle, I really need to focus on that run. So the easy runs are either zone 1 or zone 2, depending on how your body feels, okay? All right, so we go to zone 2. Zone 2 is between 60 and 70%. Now, in these runs, you still want to be able to hold the conversation, but the pace feels easy. Essentially, it's like you're letting your body go, you're letting your body move, and the pace feels good, but you're able to still have a conversation, you're still able to talk, and you're like, hey, I'm feeling great. I feel like I can run like this for 2 hours and I feel great, but the pace is a little bit faster than you would be in zone 1. So zone 1 is like, I'm totally trying to recover my body. It is beat up. Zone 2 is more like, hey, I feel good. I feel upbeat. My legs feel like they're popping. Everything's going good. My heart rate's going a little bit higher, like 60 to 70%, but I'm definitely clipping off the ground. I'm feeling good. Everything's going great. That's a good zone to be in. And there's a lot of people that say like that's like a gray zone. It's like, oh yeah, like you don't want to be in the gray zone because there's really no stimulus added. Like you're not working aerobically. You're kind of getting into threshold, but you're not really there yet. And for me, I always tell people there's a psychological aspect to running. It's really cool to run 6-minute pace and not feel a dang thing. Like I love those runs, I love being able to say like, oh yeah, I was hitting 540 and it felt like really easy. It felt great. It felt like I was doing nothing. And like some people are like, oh, that's way too fast. And I'm like, well, it's fast, but it was easy. Like I was able to have a conversation. I was running easy. and it felt comfortable. So if it felt comfortable, I was still getting recovery and I was still going easy. So I don't think that there's like a gray zone. I think there's times when your body feels good and you just want to, you want to enjoy those times. You say, hey,
I
my
think
body's feeling good, I want to go.
I think a couple things on that. I think some people tend to, especially if you don't, I think if you don't have a coach and you're kind of just out kind of doing your own thing, kind of like kind of doing the same thing every day and not having a lot of variation in your training, I think it's a tendency to want to stay at a certain pace. So if you know, like for me, for instance, like 7 flat to 7:15 pace is like a good, like pretty comfortable. I can have a conversation at it, but it's like it's definitely like I'd say it's my higher end of zone 2 and it's my lower end of zone 3. And that would be like the gray zone. I do it sometimes. I can have conversations with my girlfriend sometimes, but if I did it every single day, it would be pointless. And that's where the variation in the training comes, like the 80-20 and the uh, polarized training, you know what I mean? So like I think that's where that high end aerobic zone 2, I'm sorry, that high end of zone 2, if you're always running there and you're getting yourself tired a little bit, even a little bit for your mix and your speed workouts and your tempo runs, then it's garbage. But I think another thing to comment on that is that like especially with like the aerobic recovery, sometimes for anybody who's like kind of OCD with it, or if you like see yourself running a pace you think you're normally comfortable at and it upsets you to like see yourself go slower than a pace that you think you normally hit. So let's say like on an easy run, you normally hit 8:30 pace. And then all of a sudden today, you're like, you start to see 8:45. So you're like, no, I need to run 8:30 pace. On those aerobic recovery days, if you're a little OCD or if you have like a little bit of issues with that, you might need to either ditch your watch or just promise yourself you don't look at your watch. And I've found that on aerobic recovery days, I mean, it makes it nice to be with somebody, but really just like running it, Mark like kind of had to explain it to me and tell me like you want to be like thinking to yourself like healing, and that really helped me just to have this like this thought in my head, like I'm not going to look at my watch, I don't even care. And then to say I'm going to heal the body with each like little strike. Anyway, that was just something that Mark helped me through, because I think I was having a hard time running easy runs, really easy, especially when I needed that recovery. I wasn't getting it. So that was all crazy lady stuff.
Yeah, so like when you're doing your easy runs, always tell yourself you're not focused on the pace. The pace is like, it's not, it's more of like, here are the results. Like you look at your watch after the run and you say, oh, it's getting faster. That's cool. It's like, but the major goal is to recover, to feel good, and, to feel like, that the run basically didn't beat you up. Like, basically time on the legs is all we're going for here. It's like we just want to get that aerobic base to get bigger, and you just don't want to kill yourself, because we know that workout really isn't going to move the needle for performance. It's just something that is necessary for performance. It's like you need a big base, so we got to get it done. There's some of you that actually been doing a really good job at actually holding yourself back on those easy runs and being able to increase your volume. And that's great. That's exactly what we need. And that's exactly what we do during, build up and, during the base phase. So there's really no need to push the easy runs, just nice and comfortable. And we want to make sure that we're just getting that base work in. Okay. The next zone that we're going over is zone 3, which would be anaerobic threshold, which would be like tempo runs. Tempo runs
You
last
said anaerobic, you mean aerobic.
Aerobic, sorry. Good catch. So it's aerobic threshold. Oh, that's right. Aerobic threshold lasting from 15 minutes to an hour. Okay. These are basically tempo runs. These help drive your VO2 max. These are going to increase your performance for longer duration races. And this is what, like, a lot of people sometimes, like, they try to put too much emphasis on this zone, and they end up blowing up. So like like when you look at theoreticals, like theoretical situations, you would say like, in theory, if you spent all your time in aerobic threshold, you would be freaking amazing. Like you would be an amazing runner. Like you would be like, you're spending all the time, more bang for your buck. The thing is, if you do that, you're going to burn out because your body's breaking down every single day. And you basically can't do that every single day. So you have to be able to understand that it's an important component, but it's a component that can't be done every single day. But we can work it in and under the like 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule would say like 80% you want to go aerobic, 20% you're focusing on actual work. And what that 20% can look like can be a variation between anaerobic, mix, and aerobic threshold. So you kind of
Good
have it.
question.
Mhm.
How come the marathon plans, I don't think anybody here is a marathoner on this call, but when I see, like, when I look at your plans that you've done for like the marathoners, they have like a shit ton of these workouts compared to like most of us, where we have like one a week or whatever. Why the difference?
It's because they're trying to maximize aerobic threshold. Like they're going to be at a race where this needs to be paramount. So it's like, I think the way I train everybody is the same during base phase. Base phase is always the same because we need to be able to have a lot of miles, but we don't want to break the body down too much with a lot of workouts. So like when I was training for the marathon, I used to do 2 threshold runs a week and a mixed workout. So that was 3 hard workouts plus 2 long runs, and then my other easy runs were 15 miles. So it was like I was doing way too many miles, and I was working too hard on aerobic threshold. So now when I train everybody for base phase, I scale that back because it's just too much work, and it breaks the body down to the point where if you were to do that, like work on threshold that much, you can only do it for 6 to 10 weeks. And then at that point, you feel like shit. So you don't want to do that. And what I've learned from my experience with running is that although it's like it does get you in shape, you break your body down and then you get out of shape because you get injured. So that's not good. So having consistency over time is the most important thing. So what I've done in our programs is I've minimized basically I've put in the minimum requirement for work, but we're still getting a lot of work in. Like when it comes to marathoners, they're going to be racing at that level for so long because like when you're a marathoner, you got to be able to run like 5:20s for 26 miles. So that means your aerobic threshold zone needs to be basically like it needs to be bulletproof. With OCR, it's a little different because of the start and stopping, and the variations in paces. It's actually more important to work on the mix zone than it is the aerobic threshold, because we're constantly going hard and then we're stopping and then we're doing something else that's very much anaerobic, and then we're going back into so basically the mix is the most important zone for OCR athletes. So that's why like my OCR program is different from just pure running, because pure running, that's all you're working on. You're just going to run and you're just going to go hard at that level for 2 hours. Like there's no variation. It's like there's no nothing else is going to happen. I know exactly what's going to happen to the body. I know exactly what's going to happen. I prepare athletes for that. But when it comes to OCR, it's like we're constantly stopping, starting, and it's better to work on mixed workouts in that sense. So the next zone we're going over is zone 4, and this is our bread and butter as OCR athletes. This is where we need to be most of the time with training, and this is our Goldilocks zone right here. 80 to 85% of max heart rate for a duration of I put 8 to 15 minutes, but usually it's 5 to 15 minutes. This is, yeah, I put, yeah, like 5 to 15 minutes. So this zone is basically, this is the zone that you want to move the needle for your aerobic runs. So you're running as hard as you can with oxygen, and you're not blowing up, because once you start blowing up, that's now you're going more into the anaerobic endurance. So we want to make sure we're still running with a lot of oxygen. We're still able to have a like one word conversation. So we're running and we're just like, okay, how you feeling? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. You know, and it's just like you're able to talk to some extent, and that means you're still able to get in a lot of oxygen. The minute you can't talk and you're like and your breath is cut, it's short, you're going into anaerobic endurance, and you're not going to be able to sustain that pace for 5 to 15 minutes. That zone is where we do most of our work. So when we're doing threshold, that's why we do variations in threshold running. So we'll start out with a big tempo run one week, and then we do, then we go into max aerobic max velocity the next week by doing 2-mile repeats. And then the next week we do mile repeats. And it's like, well, why don't we just do more tempo runs? And it's like, well, because we're OCR athletes, and the aerobic max velocity is the most important attribute to what we do in our races. So it would be better for us to spend more time in those zones than it would be to go into threshold again. Okay. And then on mix days, when you work on your mix, and this is anaerobic endurance, you really don't spend a lot of time working on it. So it's like you only spend like 45 seconds to 3 minutes. The thing is, you're not going to do like a 2-hour workout in there. It's like you would destroy your body. So basically, we spend like 2 miles, maybe 3 miles of stimulus in that zone. And then after we're done with that, then we do a 5-3-3 at aerobic max velocity. And with the reason we do that is because we've already worked out the body. You know, it's already fatigued, but it's not fatigued to an extent of aerobic capacity. So let's work a different stimulus. So working that different stimulus on the same day allows you to put in more work while while you're doing work. So it's like, instead of having like 3 workouts a week, we only do 2 during the base phase. And the reason why we only do 2 is because we're working really hard on that second day, and that means we don't have to do a third day just focused on aerobic max velocity. So if we were to do that, it would be like, okay, you do threshold on Monday, Wednesday you're doing aerobic max velocity, or you're doing the mix on Wednesday, and then on Friday now you're doing, you know, aerobic max velocity. And it's like, oh man, that's a lot of work spread out. Doing the 2 workouts on one day is actually a lot more beneficial, especially because you're already tired from the mix workout, and now you got to go aerobic max velocity. It's like it's just training your body to continue to fight after you've already done something, just like in OCR. So we're doing stuff in OCR, now we're still fighting.
When you go over these next 2, so like zone 4 and zone 5, talk about the workouts that are in them. Just examples. I mean, give examples of workouts.
Yeah. So zone 4, like I'm saying, this is like 2-mile repeats, mile repeats, and the 5-3-3, or for some of you, it's the 3-3-3 after. And the reason why it's 3-3-3, it's because you're not ready for that level of work to do 5-3-3. When you are in the program for a longer duration, then you work up to 5-3-3. And then when you see that 5-3-3 happen, it's like you're going to see a level of performance go up. But yeah, those are the main workouts in aerobic max velocity. And it's very important that you guys hit those zones for efforts, either in heart rate being 80 to 85%, or using your breath to kind of measure it. And like I said, maybe 1 or 2 words you can get out. That's about it. It's like there's not much. All your oxygen you're using every ounce of it pretty much. So you want to make sure you're in those zones. Okay. The next zone we're talking about, zone 5, is anaerobic endurance. This is the mix. This is working hard from 45 seconds all the way to 3 minutes. My kids are crazy. so
Yeah, your kids are crazy.
yeah, my kids are crazy. Marquez, too loud, dude. All right, so 45 seconds to 3 minutes. Now, in this zone, a lot of coaches prescribe it unknowingly, like by doing 400 meters. But if you look at the zone, it's like 400 meters. If you're really fast, you're only in that zone for 15 seconds because if you're doing 60-second quarters. So if you're in that zone for for basically 100 meters, 400s are actually worthless in terms of having a lot of work done. If you're really fast, if you're someone that's like
time in the zone,
you're only in there for 15 seconds per repeat. It's like you're really not getting benefit. So it's funny that people that get faster, they don't think to increase their repeat because they've always done 400s. So it's like, I've always done 400s. Well, now you're getting faster. You need to be doing 500s, 600s because you need more time in the zone. When you're slower, you could be doing 400s. But when you start getting faster, you need to spend more time in that zone. So that's why for most of us, we do 600s. And 600s are a lot more bang for your buck. Like,
also you do, I mean, all the fartleks when you're prescribing like fartleks where it's 2 minutes on, 2 minutes hard, 3 minutes hard, 90 seconds hard, those are all the same zone. It might not be like 600s, but
you're still in the same zone. The time frame is there. Yeah. I like doing fartleks like during the base phase, and like I suggest you guys hit the trails, go out and find like, nice areas to run. You don't have to be on a track until we get into competitive phase. When we get into competitive phase, you got to be on the track because that's going to determine how fast you're running. I always say the track never lies. It will never lie to you. You might feel fast, but you get on the track and it's like, no, you're not in shape. It's like, oh, it's a rude awakening. But the fact that it never lies to you will tell you that either one, you're in really good shape, or two, you need to improve, or you need to get the wheels turned over a little bit faster. So with the track going into the competitive phase, definitely hit the track. That's where you're going to figure out where your legs are and how your turnover is going. And that's very important during the competitive phase. But this zone is probably the most important zone for OCR athletes. And the reason why is because we are always in this zone when it comes to transitioning through obstacles. We're running super hard. The heart rate goes well up through the roof when either you got a sandbag on you, you're carrying a bucket, and you're working hard. Like, your heart rate goes up. It has spikes. Like, I've seen some of your guys' data in races. All of a sudden you're running, and then all of a sudden, whoa, what's that little guy? And it was the Atlas carry, or it was a little, like, it was a rig or whatever it was. But your heart rate goes up. And the reason it goes up is because you're using muscles that are anaerobic. You're going into a different zone because now your muscles that are power muscles are getting involved, and it's like these are all anaerobic muscles, and now you're going into a different zone with your heart rate. The spikes occur because, like, basically, like, the zone is from 85 to 92%. Now, some of you guys might not be in that zone. You guys might not be in that zone when you're doing shorter repeats. So, like, let's say you're doing like a 400. You're never going to get to that zone in terms of heart rate because your heart rate takes a little bit of time to get up into that zone. And I'll explain some more, but I'm already thinking ahead. So when you're going into that zone, basically, like, you will experience that zone with the longer you run. Okay. So, like, let's say you're going into a race and you're starting out and you're like, okay, I'm going nice and easy. I'm staying in control. I'm in threshold pace. I'm feeling good. This is a nice good, like let's say you're doing a super. You're doing a super, your heart rate's starting to get up, it's starting to get up, starting to get up, and then all of a sudden you hit an obstacle and your heart rate starts to go through the roof. Well, now your heart rate peaked because you're going into that zone of anaerobic. And then right when you come back, the idea is to stay up in that zone. Your heart rate, if you drop that heart rate and you're trying to like, oh, I'm going to recover, I'm going to try to recover, your muscles are already screaming that they need oxygen, and they are starting to develop lactic acid. You like, I always say like people that make a mistake, like when they start racing and they realize they went out too hard, they start to slow down and they're like, oh, I went out too hard, I got to slow down. That's not going to help you. It's like you've already screwed your race. Like, guess what? It's time to say, oh well, I got to make my peace. Dear Lord, let me finish. Like, you got to step on the gas pedal. Like the minute you think like I'm gonna blow up, guess what? You got to step on the gas pedal even harder, and it's gonna suck. Like, these races are gonna suck. I did a race, a 10K when I was in college, and I wanted to take out at a 4:55. I was like, if I take out a 4:55, I'm gonna be perfect. This is gonna be perfect. I took out in a 4:40, and I was like, oh my God. And everybody in front of me started to slow down because they realized they went out too hard. What did I do on the second mile? I ran another 4:40. I was like, screw this. Like, I know it's just gonna get worse anyways. So I might as well run fast for 3 to 4 miles and then just blow up. And that's what I did. I blew up at the fourth mile. And then I started running like 5 flats, but I was like, I developed such a big lead that I was still able to get third in the race. And I was like, hey, good enough. That was great. Like, I screwed up. And then the next 2 weekends, it was the national meet, and I took out in a 4:55. I ran my pace. I ran perfect, and I was able to close in a 4:40 as opposed to, taking out in a 4:40. So ideally, you kind of know your efforts, but like at that time, it was like I was barely doing any speed work, and it was a whole issue. But like, sometimes you're gonna blow up, you're gonna take out too hard in a race. You might as well just step on the gas pedal. There's nothing that's gonna save you unless you like stop for 2 minutes and get all the oxygen possible and then start up again. But you're not gonna do that in a race. So you screwed up, you made a mistake, go. Just race it out. Just see what happens. Sometimes you might surprise yourself. I think a lot of people that are my age groupers on this call, you guys might surprise yourself in going out too hard, like taking out and saying, oh, this is not going to be good. See what happens. Like, there's always going to be another race. There's always going to be another opportunity. See what happens. Roll the dice. See, like, that's pretty much how, like I've always like rolled the dice in my races, and like I never like not tried to roll the dice and say, hey, let's see what happens if I blow up. Screw it. And sometimes it turns out where I run really fast races, or I'll blow up and I'll be like, oh well, that just didn't work out the way I planned it. But yeah, it's better just to go for it. But anyways,
you kind of rolled the dice in that ultra virus race.
Yeah, I did.
Weeks ago. I don't think anybody thought what you were doing was smart. And even I was like, oh, well, I guess he just wants to run 50 miles fast. But I never would have guessed that you could continue that pace for 85 miles. But
and see, that's the thing. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like I rolled the dice there, and it came up 7, and I was like, hey, this is great. It worked out for me. It might not work out for you guys in other scenarios, but you got to figure out where you're at. You got to figure out what you can do. We base it on workouts. We do these workouts so we can figure out, like, okay, ideally we should be taking out at this pace, so we're going to try to hit it. And if you're thinking in your mind, like, I'm trying to hit, like, I remember one of my best like feelings I had in a marathon is when I took out and I told myself, just run 5 flat. If I run out 5 flat, that'll be great. I just got to take out at 5. 5:10. I said 5:10, 5:10, and I came by at 5:02, and I was like, oh my God, I feel great today because I wanted to run 5:10, but I ended up running a 5:02. So that means my body feels good today because my perception was this feels like 5:10, but it wasn't. It was a 5:02. I was actually running faster. So that's good. I rolled with it, and I end up coming by at the half marathon at 106, feeling pretty damn great. So that's kind of how you have to think about it. It's like, maybe I'm feeling good today. I thought I was going to go this fast. Maybe I'm feeling good. I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to keep going. Like, this is push on the gas pedal, see what happens. And if you roll the dice, hey, might happen. But in OCR, going back to what we're talking about in zone 5, in OCR, we're always in this zone 5 when it comes to competition with transitions. So we got to make sure that we work on it year round. This has got to be a year-round thing. That's why when we do the build-up, and then base phase, we do these workouts. We're doing 218s. We're doing the 316s. We're doing we're doing the 90 seconds on. We're doing 600s. We're doing this. We're doing that. And the reason why is because this zone is very important to us as OCR athletes. We got to hit this zone all the time. In theory, we're training like 5K runners. Just think of it like that. We're training like 5K runners. So if we're training like 5K runners, a 5K runner always works on this zone because their speed has to be up. It's got to be there. If you don't have the wheels, you can't turn it over. Guess what? When you get off that rig and you're like, oh, should I push or should I calm down? Like, it's like, no, you got to go. Like, this is a race. Like, you got to get it going. And this zone helps you. It helps you with the transition periods. So that's why I like to do a lot of fartleks. So it's like, you're going 218, then that means you're working hard, you're resting, and then you're blasting off again. So like let's say you decided to rest on a bucket carry. Hey, I'm resting on a bucket carry. Boom, you're back into it. And that's why one of the workouts we do is an 800-meter run into a bucket carry, because that's what you're going to be doing. It's like, you're working hard, you're going to keep that heart rate up because you're still working with that bucket, and then now you're dropping it, and boom, you're getting back into this hard pace. Now, being able to transition to an 800, guess what? When you're going into aerobic max velocity in the race, you're going to feel comfortable. You're going to be like, oh, wow, I'm feeling great. Like, this is not bad. I feel good. And that's the whole point. We train harder than the races so that when we go to the races, it's easy. That if you train and it's like, oh, wow, the races are really, really hard, you need to start training hard. So that's why we train hard for these races, so that everything feels comfortable when we're at the race. We're in control mentally. If you're in a race and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, you need to tell me that, because I need to change your programming for more difficulty in the thing that you lack, because I can't have you guys have mental breakdowns in the race saying like, oh no, I'm not ready for this, or I'm not prepared for this. It's like, no, you're prepared for everything. You trained hard for everything, and you need to go into this race thinking a race is a celebration of your training. It is a coronation. It's like, oh yeah, this is just all the work coming in, baby. This is all the work. This is what I'm talking about, The minute you start thinking like, oh man, I'm in a dark place, you're gonna keep going in that dark place. You need to be thinking to yourself, this is just what I do. I train hard. I run races hard. This is just feeling great. Okay, that's why I like to our kind of MGB racing slogan is fitness, confidence, performance. Okay, so I want you guys to understand that it's all about having the right fitness, but that drives your confidence to increase your performance. Okay, so always remember, when you guys crush workouts, this is not lip service. This is freaking, I'm impressed by your workout. Like, you guys did great. If I say you did a great workout, I'm actually impressed with your workout. You are improving. You are doing an awesome thing. You are going to increase your performance. Like, this is a great thing you're doing. All right.
You don't hand out kudos.
I don't hand out kudos. I try to tell you guys, I'm not going to hand out kudos on an easy run. I'm just going to be like, hey, all right, good job. Like, hey, that's a good run. That's a good job. When it comes to your tempos, when it comes to your max velocities, your anaerobic endurance runs, that's where I'm going to be like, yes, that is performance. That's what's moving the needle. That's what I'm talking about. And when I give you guys emojis with the fire and the fit, like, you know, all that stuff, it's like I am fired up from your performance because I know that's going to drive your performance in the races. And I'm like, oh man, I'm excited because it's month 3, it's month 4. I'm like, we're not even competitive phase yet. Once we get there, we're going to see some real magic. Like, that's what gets me fired up, is like seeing you guys do well in your training. So now we're going over the next zone, which is zone 6, but I don't really put it as a zone because they're like zone 5, you got 85 to 92%. You can do it only on like a longer duration run sometimes. So it's like, basically it's like when you're going into like you're doing a super or something like that, it's like you're doing a long effort. These zones become more predominant because you are able to see the spikes and you're able to see the growth and you're able to see the trajectory of your performance. When you're doing a 10K race, like you will be able to see that 90, 85, 92% because it's such a long race. But like if you're doing like an interval, like 90 seconds, sometimes your heart rate won't go into those zones. But it's all about perceived effort in this area. So understand that, like, yeah, you might go 2 minutes and you're going really hard and like you could barely get a breath. You can't talk. You can't. Why are you yelling, dude? I'm on a call. I've explained this to you. All right. So basically, like, you're in that zone, like your heart rate takes a while for it to get up to like that area, like 92%. It takes a while for it to get there. That's like when you do VO2 max test, like it lasts about like 5 to 8 minutes typically. And usually if you're a high performer, it's like 8 minutes to 9 minutes because your heart rate, it doesn't get up that quickly. So to be in that, like to do a 2-minute repeat expecting, oh yeah, I gotta be 92%, Mark said, it's like, no, it's like your heart rate's not gonna get there. It needs to be perceived effort. So
you're saying like zone anything above zone 4. So zone 5 and 6, obviously 6 is sprinting, but anything above zone 4, we're not really looking at the heart. I mean, it's kind of hard to look at the heart rate like on that.
Yeah, zone 4, you can actually use your heart rate on zone 4. Zone 4 is very good at of heart rate being an indicator of performance. And the same thing with the zones below that. 4, 3, 2, 1. Heart rate is a great tool. Zone 5, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It's too short a duration to actually count the metric, especially when you get rest. So it's like after you do 2 600 repeats, you get a 3-minute rest. And what I'm trying to do is rest the body. I'm trying to make sure that system is recovered before we work it hard again. So if the system's recovered, guess where your heart rate's at? It's like 80, 90, maybe like for me, sometimes it goes down to 60. So it's like my heart rate goes down to 60 in the 3-minute rest. So when I start up again, my heart rate's gonna barely get up to like 150. And technically I'm in zone like 3, but I'm not in zone 3. My effort is actually zone 5. So you guys gotta remember, zone 5 is, we really don't go off max heart rate, unless we're doing like really long durations, and it really doesn't work well. So because we get so much rest and we're really trying to stress the system, like zone 5, go off your breath. You can't talk. You're not thinking about talking. You are running. All right. It's like, there is no talking involved. It is all about running. It's all about getting those times. It's all about getting that turnover going and getting those times down. Okay. So that's zone 5. Zone 6, guess what? It's anything under 45 seconds. That's anaerobic. That is sprinting. That is all out. How fast can you turn those legs over and how fast can you move? So zone 6 is basically you are sprinting. You're not thinking about talking. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just moving. Okay. So like that's why when people are always like, oh, how do I know I'm running fast enough in my sprints, I'm like, you're sprinting. Like, you're just going all out. Like, if you're going as hard as you can for 100 meters, 150, 200, like, it's just all out. So there really shouldn't be a thought of how are you moving fast enough. The thought is, it always should be, how can I move faster? Okay? Not am I moving fast enough, it's how can I move faster? Think about that all the time when you're sprinting. When you finish a repeat, you look at your time and you say, okay, how can I get better? How can I get faster? What am I doing wrong to not get faster? Am I not moving my arms? Am I not, getting my knees up? Am I not pushing off? Like, what am I doing incorrectly to not get the times that I want or get as fast as I want to be? Always think, how do I get faster? Don't think, am I pushing hard enough? You shouldn't be thinking, am I pushing hard enough? It should always be, how can I get faster? Because like when I start out like the competitive phase and I'm doing sprints, like I'll be hitting like my 200s sometimes will go like 32s. And I'm like, damn, man, that's slow as shit. Like I should be a lot faster than that. And I don't think to myself like, okay, like I'm running slow. I think to myself, how do I get faster? So the next week I come back and I hit 30s, and the next week is 28s, and then 26s. And then I'm thinking to myself, all right, now obviously I was running hard when I was running 32s, but it doesn't feel any different running 26s. Like it's the same feeling. Like I'm running hard. The thing is, running a 32 versus running a 26s is the difference between me being on the podium and me being off the podium. Okay, that's the difference. So it's like understanding that means, how do I get faster? That's the main focus you need to be worried about. Because obviously I know you guys are pushing, but like, can you get faster? Can you turn over? Can you do something different with your legs and your coordination to make you faster? And that's what the sprints are focused on, getting faster. All we're worried about is that leg turnover and that speed work. And that's what we need to have our mindset on when we go into zone 6. Heart rate, all that stuff, that doesn't matter. It's out the window. You're going 100% or 95 to 100%. And that's all based on turnover and your time, because like that's the biggest indicator of your performance, obviously, right? It's like, are you running fast? Check your time. If your time's fast, you're running fast. If your time's slow, it's not there yet. We need to keep working on this. So that is zone 6 or all out sprints. All
And
right.
when and why do you give us these in our workouts?
Well, we do sprint work more towards the competitive phase, which is basically we're getting ready for a race.
Like an A
And
rate.
yeah, and we're talking about A races and maybe some B races, but mostly A races. And we're focused on that sprint work. So kids are going crazy. All right. So we're doing sprint work because we want to make sure that we have faster turnover, right? During the base phase, we're working on different components of the base phase. So like, let's say you're getting ready for a mountain race. Well, most of your base like threshold stuff might be climbing, right? And your mix workouts might be climbing as well. When we're getting to the competitive phase, we switch gears and going faster because now your legs are coordinated for uphill running. That's great. And now your mentality is coordinated for uphill running. That's also great. But the thing is, are you fast? Now go check it on the track. When you go to the track and you start looking at your repeats and you're like, oh shit, I'm not as fast as I thought I was. Now you need to work on that speed in the last few weeks right prior to the race, because that increased speed turnover is actually going to translate when you go to the hills. Because now it's like my body knows how to coordinate fast now. Now I go back to the hills and you are just bolting up the damn hill because it's like you've got this turnover that's track turnover, but you have all that power in your legs because you've been working on it for all the base phase. And now when you put them together, it's like, bam, you start rolling up those hills. I think that was a component I missed last year when we did Tahoe. So last year when I did Tahoe, I didn't do a full competitive phase getting ready for Tahoe. And I didn't have that extra snap that extra gear to go faster up the hills. But then I went to a race in SoCal, and I was prepping for the trail championships that was going to happen in December. But I knew I had to get my turnover going already prior to December before I get ready for that race. So I was like, okay, I'll do a competitive phase getting ready for Lebec, I think that was right. And I did it, and what happened was my hill running went through the roof. I was just destroying people up the hills, and we're talking huge, steep inclines with sand hills, and I was just bolting up those dang things. I ended up running like a 142 in my beast, and Ryan Kempson, it was second place, and he ran like a 155. So it was like, this is like, I had never beaten Ryan by that much, ever. And I was like, to beat him by that much was like, oh, wait, I just discovered something. I didn't do this competitive phase on the track that I needed to do prior to Tahoe to get my turnover going, to basically capitalize on all the work that I was doing with my climbing. So that understanding the periodization of when to incorporate these workouts is very important. And that's why we do the speed work and all that speed work towards the end, because it doesn't take very much to get it going. Like I can go from a 32-second 200 down to a 26-second 200 in 2 weeks, which means like I'm getting I'm going from like not so fast to really fast in the matter of 2 weeks. And it doesn't take a lot of work or a lot of time to work on that stimulus, the anaerobic stimulus, to get it better. It's not like aerobic stimulus. Aerobic stimulus is like, it is a pain in the ass. Like, you have to be on it all the time. It's like a marriage. You got to be working on it all the time, or else it's going to go to the shitter. If you're not working on it, it's going bad. So aerobic stimulus is something that's like let's say you take 3 weeks off, right, and you try to run again. You realize that you realize your aerobic stimulus is garbage, and it's like the only reason that happens is because aerobic stimulus needs attention all the time in order for it to be, to be a beneficial thing. If you start if you're like, oh, I'm not going to work on aerobic stimulus, I'm just going to do speed work, it's like you'll be fast, but you won't be able to hold shit. Like, you won't be able to hold it for long distances, and that's why aerobic stimulus is very, very important. And it needs a lot of attention, and that's why we do it so early on in the season, and we constantly work on it, and it takes so long to develop. And then when you finally get it there, it's like, oh, thank God, like that took like 10 weeks. And then, prior to a race, it's like you're getting your anaerobic stimulus. That's quick. It happens so fast. It's like you start turning it over and your legs start coordinating, and then you're like, oh, wow, that happened so like just naturally. It was just I was slow, and now I'm fast 2 weeks later. Like, that's amazing. Like I measured all my anaerobic stimulus improvements and everything, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks. That's it. So you don't need to spend all your time doing speed workouts. I notice a lot of people like that don't have coaches and stuff. They're always doing speed workouts all the time, and it's like they're doing two speed workouts a week, and they're doing all these speed workouts, speed, hill repeats, and speed. And I'm like, you're just breaking your body down. Speed work is actually what drives like adrenal fatigue and training fatigue, and a lot of the negative aspects of training. So it's like, you don't want to be in that zone for too long. You want 2 to 3 weeks, and then you just say, hey, like, get a rest. And then after that rest period happens, that's why some of you guys right now, I'm programming you guys to run faster for like time trials. And right now it's like you do your time trial, and then what do you get after? A whole week of just aerobic easy running. And the reason why is because we need to recover from all that mess that lactic acid builds up. It's like all that acid and all that toxicity in your body. I mean, you don't want to keep rolling with that. It's like you want to get some recovery. All right, so I'm going to open this up to questions. Let me stop sharing here. There we go. All right. So if there are any questions or anything you guys aren't clear about, or anything that I can kind of drive on the start. Oh, actually, I have a question from somebody that's not here. This is from Justin. His question was the correlation between heart rate and effort paces. And I think I went over that, is that between zones 1 and 4, it's actually really good. It's a good barometer for effort, is your heart rate. But after that, zone 5 and 6, it's really not, because your heart rate, it kind of takes a while for it to get up. So for you to get into 92% to 100% doesn't make sense heart rate wise, because the duration of the repeat is actually shorter. So you wouldn't be able to get your heart rate up that quickly. So it's not a good indicator for mixed workouts or speed workouts. That go by feel. Just run hard. Just run it hard, run it strong, and be as strong as you can be. And then the other workouts, when it comes to aerobic max velocity and below, yes, go by heart rate. Heart rate's actually a pretty good barometer for that effort. And let me see. Yeah, that was his question. Any other questions? Nothing? Everything was clear?
I have a comment. So you guys, I guess, because I got this lesson already, as you could imagine, over the last 2 years, but we know now why, when we're cursing Mark for giving us 600s and 800s, why he gives us those versus like 400s. I don't know how many arguments we when Mark started coaching me, I don't know how many arguments we got in over that. I just hated him. I was like, I kept telling him it was me, and that I couldn't do 600s and 800s. Maybe they were for him, but they weren't for me. And now I know the science behind it, and I've also seen a lot of improvement because I've been actually incorporating them in my training. So yeah, those other workouts weren't doing anything for me. They were easier for me to wrap my head around, but they weren't doing anything. So anyways, love seeing all your faces. It's great that you guys all joined in, and we want to thank you guys for your continued support and for doing this.
Natalie, how long ago did Mark start coaching? Because there was a huge difference in your running.
Oh, I know. Yeah. He started coaching me, like, I guess 2 years ago, right, Mark? Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah. Before that, it was kind of like I would
I asked you all the time, like, oh, yeah, help me put together my training program. And the whole time was a big argument. And then I ended up doing my own stuff. So never
I think
coached.
after I think it was like 2017 was her last year that she trained herself. And then 2018, 2019, that's when she kind of went under the program. And it was a huge improvement for her, going and actually sticking to the program, the workouts, and everything that was actually written in the schedule. Prior to that,
I wasn't that apprehensive I joke about being like apprehensive to be coached by Mark, but I really wasn't. It was more of a schedule thing and like, making it work in my life. Like back then I didn't have I was
2 kids,
Yeah, I had 2 kids, and I had an awful commute, and I had an awful work situation, and I was going through a lot. So I was in no place to even really, I just trained just to be okay to race, which, hey, I think we've all been there. I think we all probably started there. And I think like most of the people that have reached out to Mark for coaching are kind of in that position now to be, we're all still so busy, but obviously like we've like figured out how to make this like a priority. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. So before it just really wasn't a priority, but we did get in a lot of arguments.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Any more questions? Or any suggestions actually for another topic you guys want to learn about or have more you want more information about or anything like that? I'm open to suggestions. So You gotta know.
Mark, actually, how do we know which ones we should be doing on the track and which ones we should be doing on the road and or trails?
Like pretty much during the base phase, which means that you have two hard runs a week. Like at that time, it's fine if you're doing it on the trails or anywhere. When we get to competitive phase and we're getting ready for a specific event, for some of you right now, I have specific events for like time trials. Like those events, like we're getting ready for those events, you should be on the track or try to find a measured course. Something that's like, okay, this is a measured course, it's flat, and I know it's, 600 meters, and this is what I'm doing. Like I do my mile repeats on the road because I don't want to do 4 laps. Like that would just make me want to shoot my brain. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll do a measured course. It's a mile long, and I go to that same mile repeat every single time. And I do it because I'm like, I know exactly what my times were before and where my little markers are, where it's like, oh yeah, that mailbox is where I'm supposed to be at 2 minutes. And I'm like, oh, perfect, I'm doing good. So it's like having a measured course is very important when it comes to the competitive phase. Yeah.
Hey Mark, I have a question. So I noticed that lately towards the end of my longer runs, my heart rate will be creeping up towards like the lower to mid end of zone 3 when I should be staying in like zone 1 or 2. So do you have any suggestions on like how to bring that down back to zone 1 or 2 when you're pretty fatigued near the end of a run?
Yeah, I mean, your heart rate's gonna go up when you get fatigued, and that's why a heart rate is kind of like it's an interesting barometer. I don't think it's like the most reliable barometer because like obviously your breath and your feeling and how you feel is the most accurate barometer. But heart rate itself is like, sometimes when you're finishing a run, like a very long distance run, your heart rate might go up because other processes in your body are occurring, and it's like, oh, now you're starting to like, if you didn't have enough nutrition during the run, it's like now your heart rate's starting to go up because now you're starting to realize that like your energy levels are going to shit. Like you have no more glycogen. Now you're starting to process fat. But how are you going to do that? Now your heart rate has to figure it out, and it takes a little bit of buffering for your heart to figure it out, and then your heart rate starts to calm down. So it's like your long runs right now are just going into a zone where it's like you're running out of nutrition, basically. And it's like you got to make sure you have proper nutrition on the run. So that means taking a goo every like 45 minutes and making sure you have electrolytes. That's important because if you don't have that stuff, essentially your heart rate could fluctuate upwards because now your body's like, oh, wait, I don't have enough glycogen to do this. Where am I going to go? And your heart rate's like pumping off because it's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, wait, I can use fat. Like, this is great. And then it starts to calm down again. So I think that's why you're getting that increased heart rate because you're in a zone where you're about to lose all your glycogen and your body's thinking about what the hell else am I going to do? So it's fine. If you were to continue to go, your heart rate would go back down, but your body would start to break down as well. So that actually, it's a good zone to stop a long run.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
When you say hard effort, what zonage? Like you're creeping in 4, probably like 4, you mean, right?
4.
But is it sometimes 3, sometimes 5? Like, because you have hard, like I have an intermediate ladder coming up on Friday.
Zone 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the intermediate ladder, zone 5. Yeah, that's like you're working hard. You're moving.
You're hardly able to talk.
You can't talk. Like you don't want to focus on talking. Like you can't get a breath out. You're running hard.
If somebody asks you a question, you're pissed at them.
Yeah, you're like, I ain't got time for that. Yeah, you want to be focused on the repeat.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of at right there.
Yeah, essentially, like when you're doing your intermediate ladder, you're like, oh, like you're looking at your watch. You're like, I got 500 meters. I'm going for it. I want to make this as smooth and as fast as possible. And it's not like, oh yeah, this is a great pace. It's like, no, you're working hard, and then you're getting there, and you're like, I want to run a good time for these 500 meters. I want to, I want to have Mark say, hey, good job. So yeah, you gotta run those hard. Yeah, hard effort. Jenny, do you have a question?
Yeah. So I felt like I always had kind of hard time because I live in Texas. Obviously, it's getting kind of hotter. Do you have any advice, kind of like the heart rates? I feel like the zones, like especially in the low, like if you have to go on a run and it's like 100 degrees, like obviously my heart rate is going to be like pumping up there. Do you have any advice on that? Kind of like just go by the feel more, or because it's like there's just times when you just can't avoid the heat, and then it's like you try to look at the watch, you're like, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing.
So essentially, like when you're going in, when you're running in the heat, especially 100 degrees, actually, I think it happens at like 92. Your body is responding like you're running in altitude. So that is it's a very important thing to understand, is that your heart rate will go up 10 beats automatically. And like, that's why I'm like, heart rate is it's a barometer that's deep, but your breath and your feeling and how you feel in a run is by far the most accurate thing you will have to effort, because there's situations like that, or running up a hill that's really steep. It's like you have to calm down, because like your heart rate will go up. You will be in the upper limits of that zone 2, but you just need to calm down and realize, hey, it's just because it's hot. It's just because I'm running and I'm climbing. It's so for some of you, it's because you're menstruating, and that can actually affect your heart rate. So there's things that affect your heart rate that a lot of people don't consider, that you really need to consider and say to yourself, whoa, no alarm here. It's just because certain my body's going through certain things, and
Yeah. And
or
you
you're
know,
running conditions.
I think that was another question that came in, was also kind of looking at like, is there any indication other than, oh shit, I'm injured, if that you're overtraining? So I mean, when you talk about overtraining, I think that that's like kind of I mean, there has to be like some excessive training going on, but since we all kind of like, I don't think any of us have programs that we would be like overtraining in, but at the same time, I think our daily lives add a lot to our plate. So I think that's where like we could possibly be in the zone of overtraining our body, and that's only mostly because of what we do in our daily activities and how we're recovering and how we're dealing with these things. So I mean, sleep is number one. So it's like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough nutrition? Are you getting enough recovery? All these things. But heart rate does it can be an indicator. So I mean, that's looking at, I think more so, some of you guys on a run may say, hey man, my heart rate's kind of high. I feel like the Garmin and the heart rate monitors are kind of hard to trust, but at the same time, I think that your resting heart rate, just noticing, even feeling your heart rate going up, could be an indicator that like you need to calm down, that you need to take a break, that maybe this is a recovery run instead of a hard run. So that is something, a lot of, I think I've seen like a lot of people, even like Lindsay and other people, say like, I think my hoop was trying to tell me something right before I got sick. It's like heart rate was like up. It's like your indicators that, resting heart rate you wake up with in the morning was higher. So the heart rate can be like a really cool tool to use to kind of like monitor your daily, your, I guess like your readiness to train. But at the same time, it goes up for other things as well. Heat is one thing for sure, heat and humidity, obviously altitude, and then it goes up like at different times of the month. For women, I know for sure it's like ovulating, and other times, and it goes up if you didn't get enough sleep the night before, you had a shit night of sleep, kids are waking you up, whatever it is that you have, for whatever reason you spent too much time on your media or on your computer all day, couldn't sleep for a few days, and then your heart rate is higher. So those are things that like I wouldn't necessarily say indicate overtraining, but those are reasons that you would be putting your body in a state of fatigue when you're not even training hard enough to fatigue it that hard.
Yeah.
So,
Like for the most part, I don't think anybody in our program would be overtrained or like have like fatigue like that, because like I try to do my best to look at every individual that I coach, and I don't give you guys huge amounts of volume. like myself, I run 80 miles a week, and it's like that is the max that any of you would ever run, and it's like that is like it's enough. Like you don't need to
Yeah,
be.
but Mark, you know what life is like when we've been our busiest.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And that's the
we
thing.
were digging
It-
ourselves into a grave when we
Yeah.
were working as crazy as we were a few years ago. We were overtraining. We were only putting in like 40 and 50 miles a week. And that was,
Well, I was putting in like 70, 80 still.
I know, but I'm saying like, I'm just saying, you know how like the
I know how
outside-
much that can
yeah.
affect your body. Yeah, exactly. If you're driving 2 hours to your job and then working out at 5
Getting no
o'clock in the
sleep.
morning and then driving 2 hours home, miles.
I see Liz nodding. That's Liz. New baby. We know.
All right. So, any other questions or any suggestions for next time that we might do this? What you guys might want to talk about?
No. But when are the cookies gonna be ready?
No.
Nothing. All right. I guess that's it. Thank you guys all for showing up. Thank you for, hopefully you learned something. I don't know if you did. If you did, I hope this is beneficial to you guys. And I hope you guys, just gain something from this. I know for me, like I said, like learning all this stuff was very influential in my understanding and, being able to like take my training to the next level, because I was like, oh, that's what this workout does. Better do it correctly. It's just like making sure that I do certain workouts properly, because knowing exactly what they were going to do to benefit my performance. So hopefully you guys gain that information and you guys kind of
Absolutely.
understand. Yeah. And I'm very thankful and grateful to coach every single one of you. I love coaching. It's probably my passion in life, definitely my retirement plan. And I think I'm going to coach to the day I die. So, to be as busy as I am and to be able to coach, I'm so grateful for this opportunity for you guys to allow me to coach you. It's really like, it's awesome. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Stay safe.
You too.
And thanks for coming. And
Have a
thanks
great Sunday.
for me out. All right, guys. See you later.